Episode number 32. Hi, you're listening to the Careers Beyond Motherhood podcast with your host, Janine Esbrand. I'm here to help working mums like you to thrive in your careers and in motherhood. I share tips, strategies and inspirational conversations with awesome women to help reduce the struggle in your juggle.
Time for a say, Mummy.
Hello and welcome to today's show. It's great to be back behind the mic talking to you. I want to apologise in advance because I have a terrible cold, but I really needed to record this episode today, so apologies about my voice. For those of you who are listening for the first time, I don't normally sound this nasally and bunged up, but I am going to go ahead and record this intro because we are diving into an awesome interview that I recorded some time ago with an amazing lady called Clarissa Rayward, and so I think you're going to get great value from it, so I wanted to get it out to you today. Before I do that, I want to share with you something that I've been working on that I'm really excited about, and that is the Careers Beyond Motherhood Collective. So if you've been listening to the podcast and if you're a member of the Careers Beyond Motherhood community, you will know that my aim and my mission is to support women who want to build the careers that they love whilst raising a family. So you may well be an ambitious woman who has spent a lot of time building up your career. You've dedicated time, energy, effort into building up your career, and then you become a mum, and then you're faced with the question, what do I do next with my career? Do I go back to what I was doing before? Do I refocus and do something else? Do I just stay at home? Do I launch my own business? There's lots of questions, and even if you've gone back to work some time ago, you may be at a crossroads as your children grow and develop and go through different phases. You may be looking at your career and thinking, well, what do I do next? I've been supporting women on a one-to-one basis through my private coaching and through my course, but I have been looking at ways that I could support women on a bigger scale and impact more women, and so I've decided to launch the Careers Beyond Motherhood Collective, which is a monthly membership for women who want to build careers that they love whilst raising a family. The community is all about helping you to thrive in both your career and motherhood. So if you became a member of the collective, you could expect to gain clarity on your career direction, develop the mindset that you need to achieve your goals, learn some proven strategies to help you take your career to the next level or launch your dream business, or indeed grow your dream business, gain confidence and learn how to become a leader at work and at home, learn strategies to help you to improve your work-life balance, and ultimately experience less stress, overwhelm and anxiety. So there will be a blend of coaching, trainings, guest expert interviews and accountability calls for you to help you to move you forward to the next stage in your career. You're going to have access to a community of like-minded working mums who are dedicated to doing great things in their career and raising their family in a way that works well for them. So the doors to the collective are open from now until Friday the 20th of July. You have the opportunity to come in and join as a founding member, and as a founding member you will have the opportunity to contribute and give input and insight into the direction of this membership. So I have all of the content and information that I know is going to be valuable for you, but I also want to be open and take on board any comments or requests that you may have to make sure that we are building an awesome membership that is providing everything that you need to truly thrive in your career and motherhood. So if you are interested in joining, you can head over to lightboxcoaching.com/the-collective and you can grab your spot as a founding member. So I am sharing this exclusively with the listeners of the podcast and the members of the Careers Beyond Motherhood community. So if you want to jump in as a founding member, you can do so at the cheapest price that this membership will ever be. So when I open the doors to the general public, it is going to go up in price. So if you want to jump in now, then please head over and grab your spot. Okay, now on to today's episode. I am interviewing an amazing woman. She is a mother of two. She's a lawyer. She's the author of 2 books. She runs the podcast Happy Lawyer, Happy Life, and she is joining us today to talk all about the juggle between work and family life for her quest to find happiness and the lessons that she's learned on that journey. And although we discuss lawyers and bringing more happiness to lawyers, everything that we talk about is totally relevant to all working mums. So even if you're not a lawyer, please do continue to listen because you will find some golden nuggets relevant for you. I really enjoyed interviewing her. She's from Australia, so it's nice to have someone from a different part of the world on the podcast sharing their view on what it looks like to juggle work and family life. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview. Hi Clarissa, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you. Could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Clarissa Rayward. I'm a lawyer based over in Australia in Brisbane, Queensland, which is sort of on the east coast, and it's quite lovely and hot most of the year. And in my day job, I run a law firm called Brisbane Family Law Centre, which just works with people going through divorce and separation. And we now just really work in the space of mediation and collaborative practice. But in my other life, I now do a lot of work with other lawyers around happiness, and that's come about, I guess, because of my own experience of struggling to be a lawyer and struggling to find happiness in my career over the last few years, and I guess find that balance between being a mum and being a wife and a friend and trying to run a business. And so I've done a lot of work really trying to unpack just what it takes to I think be a great lawyer, but also manage to have a great life outside of law.
Wow, that's awesome. So you're super duper busy. In your other life you do this, and in your practice you do that. That's awesome. There's so much I want to ask you about, because I think that it's a common problem for many lawyers. It's one of those professions where people go into it thinking they want to save the world and do great things, and then it turns into a life where you're working really hard but you can be unhappy. And so the fact that you're focusing on happiness and helping people to figure that out is really great. What was your journey into motherhood like? I'd love to hear about that and how that impacted this whole quest to find happiness in the law.
Yeah, it was a little crazy. So I've got, ironically, I have a 5-year-old and I'm currently pregnant. So I'm living it all over again at the moment. Yeah. Anyway, so first time round, I was running my practice, and I guess you could say I was reasonably planned in terms of wanting to have my daughter. But what I wasn't ready for is week 5 of being pregnant, and I had really serious morning sickness and just ill health that just went on all day. And so I sort of in my head thought, that's okay, you're pregnant for what really is 10 months, even though they say 9.
Yeah.
I'll have plenty of time to organise my practice and work myself out. And just literally from the minute I found out I was pregnant, everything had to change. So that I think was really challenging at the time, but I actually think it was probably really helpful because it made me make a lot of changes before having my daughter London. Mm-hmm. That meant that once the time she arrived, I was sort of already in the headspace of things are out of my control. Right. And I need to get my head around that now. And so I think what did help me with London was that I had an attitude of go with the flow. Accepting that some days you wake up and you have all of these great notions, plans, and you've had no sleep, or your baby's just really not keen on that idea at all. So you've got to change everything really fast. So I don't know, I think it by far was one of the most challenging years of my life. I describe the first year of her life as one that I felt like I was in a haze for most of it. But yeah. But like all of us, you get there in the end. Yeah. In a sort of disorganized way.
I love that the fact that you got to that place where early on that you just kind of let go, because I think as lawyers we're super planners, so you think that you can read the books and the books say if you do this will happen, and you try and plan everything out, and it just drives you crazy. So I think that's something that you have to go with the flow. The baby hasn't read the book. So you have to kind of
and your body hasn't read the book either. And yeah, I'm just over the 3-month mark now, and I'm living exactly the same experience again. I've been really sick. And I guess the only good thing is this time I'm like, yeah, well, of course you are. That's what happened last time. But same thing. And I think I actually didn't read a lot of books. Maybe that was my failing as well. But I really just accepted that I didn't know what I was in for. It didn't really matter how much reading I did. I still probably wasn't going to understand what I was in for, and just live it each day. And I think that has helped a lot.
Yeah, it's the second time round. I just had my second daughter, my second child, which is a daughter. I've got a son as well, and it's, yeah, you know kind of what to expect. So it's a lot easier, I think, in some respects.
I'm hoping that. Everyone says that. I'm not convinced yet. Ask me in another 12 months or so.
I know, totally. So you also wrote a book. So tell us more about the book. I'd love to hear about how you went from your experience to then deciding that you wanted to write a book about it.
Yeah, so I've actually written 2 books,
Okay.
just to be really confusing. First book I wrote was really for my business and for my clients, and it's called Splitsville, and it's very much around going through divorce and finding, sensible, calm, dignified ways to do that. I love writing. I'd started blogging before writing my book and really enjoyed writing the book. My more recent book that you're talking about is called Happy Lawyer, Happy Life, and I wrote that last year. And that was really, I guess, a culmination of starting the blog called The Happy Family Lawyer, which I started in around about November, I think it was 2013, when my daughter was about a year old. And that was probably when I found myself at what I'll call my lowest. And it wasn't so much probably being a mum at the time, it was actually running my business. I was really struggling with running the business and that sense of not really being able to do anything well. And at the time I didn't have the really clear vision that I have now about my practice. And I had people working with me that maybe weren't quite aligned with what I believed in, and I was struggling with that. So it was really a time in my law life where I was thinking, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. The idea of running a florist right now sounds really attractive to me. And so I remember it quite well. I went and actually met with a psychologist to try and get some assistance and really try and get to the bottom of what I was feeling. And that person, I found it just quite enlightening, sitting in a reception room for a counselling service, and they had rainforest tunes.
Okay.
Which I remember really well because it was probably the first time in a year that I'd sat still, literally doing nothing for 10 minutes and just listening to these rainforest tunes. And I felt better already.
Oh, wow.
Okay, interesting. Just need to slow down. And then the advice I was given at the time, ironically, was you need to put your daughter to bed and you need to get sleep. And I thought, oh, yes, that's an interesting concept, isn't it? And it was, again, just that reminder that, hang on a second, life probably isn't that bad, but I was getting so stressed and trying to do too much, and it was really playing into how I felt. So at the same time, I don't know why, I watched the movie Julie and Julia, which some people might know. It's about a girl that she blogs her way through a cookbook for a year, the lead character in this movie. So she starts a blog and just spends a year blogging about recipes. I can't cook, so I wasn't about to start a blog that had anything to do with food. But I thought the notion of blogging looked really quite fun and romantic, and I thought, oh, maybe I can do that. I Googled how to start a blog one Saturday night. I registered a domain with no thought in the world called The Happy Family Lawyer, and I started writing. And so each week I got into the habit of just writing an article about whether it was something to do with relationships or love or my life as a lawyer or being a mum or whatever it was. I just started writing, and the blog started to get a bit of traction, one would say, a year later, and I realised that more people than my mum were reading it, so I had to pay a bit more attention to what I was writing. And then fast forward 2 years, as I sort of went back through what I'd written, I realised that by writing the way I was in sort of this weekly pattern, I'd really started to pay a lot of attention to my own happiness. I'd started to look into the psychology and look into a lot of research around happiness. And all of my blogs started to speak about that. And it sort of made me go, well, hang on, I've got the content here again for another book, because I've really been dwelling over this. And so that's the really long answer to your simple question of how did I get a book? But it was that process of myself, without even thinking about it or realizing I was doing it at the time, really starting to pay attention to what does make us happy, whether we're lawyers or not.
Yeah.
And there's so much research going on in the world at the moment around both positive psychology and neuroscience, that it was sort of the perfect time, I think, for me to be paying attention to it, because there was just so much happening and so much I could learn. So that's where the book came from.
That's awesome. I love to hear the backstory to things, because sometimes you can see things and so even though you said the long route, but I love that. So I got to understand kind of how you got there. And then it's also good because you feel like you can relate, because so many people go through that same thing, that same process of just feeling like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to manage this? What is causing me to feel this way? So it's good to hear how you approached it. And also, I guess with a lot of the people that I speak to and I work with, the juggle in terms of work and family life is talking about your juggle at work with your juggle at home, but not so much kind of when you're running your own practice. So it's interesting to hear that you were finding it difficult even though you were your own boss. And you were able to set your schedule. I guess sometimes you find yourself working harder. So setting your schedule doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to find making the balance, in inverted commas, easy.
Yes, I agree. I think one of the significant challenges of being self-employed is that you are it, and when something's going wrong, it is your problem. There's nothing you can do about that. And there are times absolutely where I think to myself, maybe I should just go and be an employee somewhere, because technically I'd be employed for particular hours. That's all I'd have to do, and I'd get on with my life. Realistically, I know that, like most lawyers, I'm not that person that can just work between 9 and 5 and go, okay, I don't have to think about this anymore. I think that's, for all of us, that's our failing. But I think running a business, once your business gets to a bit of size and you start employing people, I describe it as another child. It really is. And when it's going well, it's great. When it starts to get a bit rocky, it can become incredibly stressful.
Yeah. And I think with me growing my coaching practice, I didn't realize when I got into it how much goes into the business side of things. There's, the work that you do, so as a lawyer or as a coach, and then there's the actual building of the business, which takes up a whole load of time and headspace, which you may not anticipate when you say, I'm going to start my own firm, or I'm going to go out on my own.
That's right.
So
that's right.
than I expected. So what are some of the things now, would you say, that you put in place, having had your experience and also having written the book? What are some of the things that you would say to people have worked for you in terms of finding a way to integrate your work life with your family life?
So, because I'm just a simple brain person, I broke it down into 5 key areas. There's 5 key things that I think, if we all do, ultimately give a better sense of purpose and happiness. And the first one, and the most important, is health. And I think as professionals and lawyers, and I think particularly as women, health is often not number one on our list. All of these other commitments that we have become number one, and our own health is like, I'll get to that when I get to it. And this for me was one of the biggest shifts that I made. I've always been quite a healthy person. I enjoy exercise, all of those things, but I certainly wasn't prioritizing it. And so for me, health is, when I say health, what I'm talking about is getting enough sleep. Once I made that shift, everything became easier. So sleeping well, eating well, and getting exercise into your life. And you've got to prioritize that above work. So you've got to look at your week and say to yourself, how am I going to make sure that this week I'm getting exercise in, that I am getting sleep, and that I am eating well? And then the rest of it needs to slot in after that. And if you think of the saying, when you travel on an aeroplane and they do the demonstration at the beginning, and they always say, fit your own mask before helping any other passengers on the aeroplane.
Yeah.
This is exactly the same thing. We can't be good lawyers. We can't be good mums. We can't be good at anything if we're not healthy. And you only have to reflect upon the moments in your life where you've been very sick to go, yeah, of course, like I couldn't think well that day. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And I see this a lot, like it's not so much the health that deteriorates to the point where it's really significant, but just not sleeping has such an impact on our brains, as you probably know with a 3-month-old right now. And it just makes everything hazy. So just if you did nothing else but focused on sleeping, eating well, and alcohol is a problem in our industry, all of these sorts of things, if you can just pull all of that back and get exercise, whatever sort of exercise works for you, it really doesn't matter what it is, but something into your life, it will make a massive difference to your happiness, both at work, at home, wherever you are. And there's so much, again, neuroscience about the impact of all of those things on both our bodies and our brains. And people who eat well and exercise and all of those things live longer. It's stuff that you just go, I want to live longer, so why wouldn't I do that? But we get busy, and so we don't prioritize it, and our work takes priority, or our kids take priority, we've got to reverse engineer that and make ourselves a priority, which can be hard. It's not an easy thing to do because it feels a bit selfish, I think.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Do you want me to keep talking? Because I'll just keep
I was
talking.
just gonna, I was just going to say on that, because I know that I don't know if I haven't read her book yet, but I've come across the research that Ariana Huffington did on sleep.
Yes,
And the fact that we are living in a sleep deprivation. A lot of us are going through it,
exactly.
and willingly going through it. And it is so true. The other day I managed to get an hour and a half nap in the daytime. Both babies were sleeping at the same time, so I decided to sleep, and I felt so refreshed just by having an extra hour and a half, and my mind was so much clearer. And I think that we have the idea that we need to keep going and going and going because we've got things to do, but we're not as productive. It's just like when you skip having a lunch break because you've got work to do. The work that you do in the afternoon is not going to be as good of quality as if you would have taken some time out. So I think it is really important for us to say our bodies need that time to rejuvenate. We can't just keep going and going and expect to have great output. So yeah, I totally agree that needs to come first before you then fill up your calendar with all the other things. We need to make time for sleep.
You really, and
If
we
you baby
really have
you,
to.
that is.
Well, and at 3 months, I'm going to give you've got a break for at least another 9 months. But what I did do when my daughter was really young, and I must say it was really hard at the time, but once I got into it, it worked really well, was running, because I could put her in the pram and I could run and she was with me, and so it was easy and it didn't matter when I did it and all of those things. When I started, I could barely run 200 meters and I'd be like puffing like a crazy person going, why am I doing this? And people must think I'm an idiot. But I started doing it every day, and I got into this beautiful routine where that's what I did every morning. And I got very fit and very healthy. It's probably the fittest I've been in a long time. Once she's got too big to sit in the pram, it was very annoying because I couldn't run as much anymore. But there are ways to do it. Last year, I found someone that was willing to train me in like a personal training way, and I could take my daughter as well.
Oh, cool.
So you've again just got to say to yourself, I have to do this. There has to be a way. If your kids are older, you can go and run with them in the park or go swimming with them or whatever it is. But
yeah,
it's making that effort and saying, I have to do this. How am I going to do it? This is what my life looks like. This is what my family looks like. I have to find a way to make it work for all of us. Sounds so easy, I know, but it's doable is what I'm going to say. It really is doable. And
yeah, you just have to get creative with it. I think for me, after my son came, I just always felt like he had to be sleeping for me to do things. And then I got to a point where I thought, no, actually, he's getting older now. I can integrate him. So I would do kind of squats holding him so that he was the weight, and I would do squats, or I would do yoga and have him lying on the mat. And he used to think it was really funny when I was, leaning over him. So it was just thinking, even if I just do 10 minutes, what could I do today, and how could I just use the baby as my weight or as my company? So yeah.
And even some of the other things that I've seen work really well, most of us here now at my office have standing desks, so that's something that during the course of the day, standing and working again completely changes how your body and brain works, makes you much more alert, but again it's a form of movement. And then having walking meetings, that's something else that we do here at the office, is if you need to have a chat to a colleague about something, or whatever it is, you take the conversation and you go for a walk around the block. And again, it's just, it's that incidental exercise, but it's brightening up your day. It's getting you outside, just different ways and different things. I'll sit sometimes, or not sit, but stand. I'll be on the phone talking to someone and I'll be doing squats. I'm not doing that right now, but just moving, just getting movement into your day in different ways. And I think you're so right when you say, if you can just be creative about it, there is a way. There's always a way. So it's taking the time and prioritizing it that's really, really key when it comes to health.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's I don't know where I guess it's the culture where you're just trying to bring results, you're trying to build more hours, you're trying to help more people, that gets us into that mindset that we have to put ourselves last. But I love the analogy that you shared about putting your mask on first if you're on an aircraft. You can't really help people, you can't be the best person for your kids, and you can't do that if you're not looking after yourself.
Exactly.
So yes, I totally agree. I love it.
So that's number one. So I'll do the other four really fast because
Yeah,
I
go
know we
ahead.
don't have hours. So it spells happy. It's really easy. So H is health.
Mhm.
A is attitude, which for me really means having an optimistic and positive mindset. So seeing the world from a place of glass half full, and using a lot of gratitude practice and kindness is really key in that. So really, again, being able to say to yourself, I get to go to work rather than I have to go to work. I get to do this cool thing today, in Lawland, which, sorry, I call it Lawland. I should give you that. I gave you it too, rather than I have to do this thing. And just once you start to really pay attention to the positive, again, the neuroscience tells us that our brains change, the neural pathways change, and the parts of our brain that control optimistic and positive thoughts start to grow. Gratitude practice also has the wonderful effect of calming the stressful parts of our brain, calming the emotional centers that worry about the negative. And our brains as humans are trained and pre-wired to pay more attention to danger, to negativity, to problems. And the life of a lawyer is 24/7, usually conflict, difficult people, difficult clients, difficult challenges that we're managing. So there are no shortage of negative inputs, like they'll be coming at you from everywhere. The key is to really start focusing on what are the positive things, what are the good things, what do I enjoy, and working more of that into your day. So having a positive attitude is number two.
Love that.
Number three and number four for me, P and P, are passion and purpose. You need to make sure you've got passion in your life. And for so many lawyers that I've certainly spoke with, and for myself as well, my passions actually have very little to do with being a lawyer, which I think is also where we get confused. I think we think that we have to be passionate about law to be happy in law and to do our job well. And there are parts of my job that I absolutely love, and there are many parts that I find somewhat tedious. But there are things in life that I love. And being self-employed, I think the advantage I have is that I'm able to bring a lot of the stuff I love to my work and have more flexibility than I would somewhere else. And for me, that's been things like my podcast and being very creative and having a blog and having websites. And I love colour, and my office looks like a rainbow. So it's little things, but they
I
make a
just
big
love
difference.
your website, by the way. It's so it's so
colourful.
Yeah, it's colourful, but also it's like an infusion. This is what I would say. In terms of, like, I went on there and I was like, oh my goodness, she's doing all these things, and then I felt like I could see you as a person, as opposed to just a law firm. Like I could see what you're interested in and what your passions are, because you put it all together, as in, this is what I am, or this is what I do.
Exactly.
In different aspects.
And I think, and it's really key, I think, again, sadly, for so many of us at law school, and this seems to be worldwide, you're trained almost to lose all of those human personal aspects of you and become quite machine-like in how you operate. And again, what I'm observing is that the minute you allow the human aspect of yourself, the who you are, the authentic parts of you back into who you are, clients connect with that, colleagues connect with that, and all of a sudden you can have much more meaningful relationships, and that ultimately helps business. Business is built on relationships. So I think it's letting down some of that guard that we all have built, and just allowing us to be real people. So passion. Purpose is about being clear about why you're a lawyer. And you said this when we first started talking. So many of us are drawn to law because of a desire to make a difference, to change the world. And we realise very quickly with billable time units and piles of paperwork that we're not going to be Erin Brockovich, and we're probably never going to change the world. And that can be really, really confronting. So again, you've got to come back wherever you are in your career and ask yourself the question, why am I doing what I do? What is this about for me? And I think the minute, again, you've got clarity on that, you can build a career around it. You can build your work around it. For me, I've built a business around it. And it makes those harder days easier, because you can go back to saying to yourself, this is why I do what I do. This is why I choose to be a lawyer. Lawyers are smart people. There's a strong chance we could have done 50,000 different things at university and had many different careers, and this is the one we've fallen into. And I think sometimes that's a great thing, and sometimes it's a bit terrifying, particularly in this world of choice that we live in now. So for me, being clear about why you do what you do, and it can change over time. What brought me to law 20 years ago is not what keeps me here now. But being clear about that has certainly helped me to manage the stress and the at times unhappiness about our work.
Yeah.
So they're the 2 P's. And then the 5th letter is Y, of course, which is really what you and I were just talking about, which is being authentic and being yourself. And I think the era of social media has been so helpful for this. We expect, outside of law, I expect anyway, when I'm doing business with someone, to see a bit of who they are as a person. And I'm certainly seeing that coming into law now. And I think, you and I are great examples of that. We're on the other side of the world from each other, but I have a level of understanding of who you are as a person, and you have the same of me, all thanks to electronic media. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think the more lawyers enable themselves to be a part of what they do, whatever that is, whoever you are, and you play to your strengths, the happier you're going to be in the work you're doing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I feel like after I became a mum, I don't know whether it was the fact that I birthed a human or what, but I felt like I could give myself permission to just be me.
Yeah, I think you care less about everything else.
Yeah, I'm just like my baby.
I've been in really awkward places now, so nothing really matters anymore.
Exactly. But I actually started a new job after having my son. I went from being in private practice to being in house, but just starting the role, I just was myself from day one, and I found that within a year of being there, I built some really strong relationships with people really quickly, and I don't think that would have happened before, because I was completely myself and just open. And I think that, like you said, you feel that you can be yourself, and therefore you're happier in what you're doing on a day-to-day, because you're not wearing that mask or not thinking about what you should be saying or should be doing all the time.
Yes.
So yeah, it's great when you can just be yourself, and being yourself is fine and people relate to it, and it helps you to build bonds and grow your business or build your practice. So that's really, really good advice.
Yeah.
I love to have inspirational quotes that I hold and revert back to, and I'm sure you must have one that you could share with our audience.
Ingrid Bergman, she's a good one. Happiness is good health and a bad memory.
Oh, good. I like that.
It's very appropriate, I think.
That is very appropriate. Thank you. And the other thing I wanted you to share is just if you could give, I know you went through your happy acronym, but if you could give one tip to a new mother who is a lawyer, what would you say that would be?
Go with the flow.
Go with the flow. Love it.
Yeah, like just whatever you need to do today, just do that, and try not to worry about tomorrow, and try not to worry about yesterday, and just today. Just worry about right now.
Awesome. I need to take that on board right now as well.
Yeah.
It's crazy because you go through cycles, and you're really on it sometimes, then other times you forget, and then you go back to your whole trying to be busy and do all these things. So yeah, it's really good to remind myself I need to slow down too.
Yeah.
Okay, so if people want to learn more about your book and about your work, where would they find you? Where's the best place to find you?
Probably my website, thehappyfamilylawyer.com.
Okay.
Is the easiest place.
Yeah. And you also have a podcast. Do you want to share a bit about the podcast? Because if people
Yeah,
are listening to this, they might well want to listen to yours too.
Yep. So my podcast is called Happy Lawyer, Happy Life, and I interview usually lawyers, and really just try and tap into what their career path has been and what makes them happy. And it's been such a joyous experience to just learn and hear from all these different people and realize I'm not the only one.
Yeah, it's
That's
awesome.
been the best bit.
I've listened to your show, and I guess you're the first Australian person I've had on the show, and listening to your guests is like, oh, everyone's having the same issues wherever you are. I speak to people in the States, in the UK, in Australia, and yeah, it's a common theme that we all have as lawyers. So it's really good to be able to hear other people's experiences and know that you're not on your own.
Exactly. I think there's something quite calming about saying, oh, I'm not the only one.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's been so good chatting to you. Thank you so much for all of your insight and giving us those tips on how we can move towards happiness, because I know that there's so many people that need more happiness in their lives.
That is no problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that was awesome. It was so good to hear Clarissa's practical and intentional approach to finding more happiness in her life and figuring out how to juggle being a great lawyer and also making time for the other important things in life. It was also good to hear about the struggles that she had in the early stages of running her business, because often we can think that going back to the corporate world is going to be harder than launching and growing your own business, when in fact there are different challenges, but certainly challenges that you will face if you choose to go down the route of running your own business. We can learn a lot from her and all that she just shared with us. If you want to learn more about Clarissa, I'm going to put links to her podcast and her books and everything else we discussed on the show notes. So head over to lightboxcoaching.com/episode 32 and you can grab all of those. I've listened to her podcast and it's great. So if you want to hear more from her, I definitely suggest you check it out. Alright, before I go, just a reminder that if you want to join the Careers Beyond Motherhood Collective, the doors are open until Friday the 20th of July and then they will be closed until later on in this year. So head over to lightboxcoaching.com/the-collective if you want to join. And that's a wrap. That's all from me today. I will be back again next week. Until then, look after you and look after your babies. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.
This podcast features music from Awesound.